I'm lucky enough to go to a number of really great events, and I always ask people what they think the next big thing will be, generally, and particularly around search and tech. And the one-word answer which keeps coming back to me, particularly this last 2 years, is voice. So make of that what you will, but it has certainly triggered a lot of interesting and innovative conversation in the circles I've been rushing around in. Our next guest has done a number of interesting things in his life, including at Scottish Television. He set up and grew the developer relations team at a little British startup called Skyscanner, a billion-dollar success story, as you know, and he now finds himself at Amazon, but specifically as the principal evangelist for Amazon's Alexa Skills Kit. Please welcome to Like Minds, David Lowe.
Good afternoon. Not quite. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Oli, for the introduction. It's my job for the next 20 minutes or so, as an evangelist, to try and convince you that what you just said was right, that voice is the future, we believe it's the future, and we think you can apply lots of things to it. So, for about 20 minutes or so, my job is to tell you all about that. So, to introduce, think about Like Minds today and what we're all here for, and the little interjections where you've been asked to speak to each other. We think that is the way everybody likes to behave, and everybody naturally behaves. But in technology, we've gone backwards. So in the last 40 years, as you see, we've had gadgets that have been built to touch, to type, horrible grey boxes in the corner that just aren't naturally how we behave from the day we're born. Because the first thing we do is speak. And we think that's wrong. The technology's gradually worked its way back as it's improved to get a little bit nearer to how we naturally speak to each other and have our own sensors that are built into us, how we communicate. And we think, as Amazon and as an industry increasingly, that's going to be the way everybody will deal with technology and how we will naturally start to behave. So think about that for a second. Because we'll start with a quote. So many of you will have reached for a mobile phone in the last 2 minutes, probably, when we had a little break. Forrester Research did some thinking on this very deep with marketers and developers and other companies about 3 years ago specifically, and came out with the concept of the mobile moment, which they very specifically define as this: the moment in space and time someone pulls out a mobile device to get what they want in immediate context. They know because they trust there's a source of that information immediately available to them in their pocket. But even that has a level of friction to it, because you have to reach for the thing, you have to unlock it. And I'm not doing a live demo today because I got burnt last week taking the mick out of Apple and their live demo going wrong, and mine went wrong straight afterwards, so I've left that out today. But you get the point. There is a level of friction that doesn't need to be there, and this is where we think everything's going. The next natural extension of that mobile moment is where we are. Now think about a use case for that. If you're watching sport on television, and one I really want to do in the next few months, watching, say, football, cricket, could be anything. Many times you will say to yourself, how many was that? Has he done that before? Who's the referee? What's his history? And all these things that the broadcast doesn't always give you. Why can't you just do what you would do in the house or in the pub and ask the person next to you, except the person might be the television? Very, very easily, with a source of data, as the mobile moment proved, data is readily available. So why can't we just make that available through the screen, through a speaker? And you ask, just ask in the room. It's a concept we call ambient computing, because it doesn't seem to be there, but it works. That's the use case that's very instinctive to everyone, I hope, and you get the idea. And this is the sort of thing we're aiming to do. And it's all about steps over the decades in terms of technology. Every 10 years or so, something happens that makes us think, but it also makes us expect a little bit more than we used to. So if you think, if you're as old as me, the first thing you might have used was teletext or something along those lines, where you might have typed 301 to get the weather. I forget what the numbers are now, it's been so long. But everybody built up an expectation who had one of these TV sets. You wouldn't call it a device back then, but that's what it was, to get some information. Step on from that, you got to computers, which many people had, with interfaces a little bit more rich. You could input differently, you got more back from them. Step on to that 10 years on. The web democratized it. Anybody could build one of these interfaces and connect it to everybody else's. Hyperlinks joined them all together to make them much easier to discover. Think about that step 10 years ago, whether you expected mobile phones to go that way. You probably didn't. You probably didn't expect to be looking at a phone. Somebody said to me the other day, the new iPhone's £1,000 or something like that. But think about something that you touch every 2 minutes in your life, and the value of it is probably a lot more than £1,000 because that's your expectation. So we're trying to get to the stage beyond that. We think the next natural step and the next decade jump will be voice recognition and the application of it. So we believe as a company, and increasingly as an industry, as I say, voice is that next big disruption that we've talked about a little bit this morning already. And how to use it is the next thing. But we believe that's the disruption that everybody needs to be aware of and know about. But don't just take our word for it. There's a book which I happily recommend to everyone, not just because it's on sale in the Amazon store, but it is the best-selling book about voice interfaces by a lady called Kathy Pearl, who didn't come to this industry, she's adapted into it. And she says, the second line is the important one to me, make it so we ourselves act less like computers and more like people. Because as we said at the start, we've built technology to do things that are native to us. So we're having almost to retrain ourselves to trust a voice service, which is something we should instinctively use, because it's what we do. Kathy Pearl, as a voice designer, believes that training is not necessarily just in technology, it's training ourselves to use these systems, trust, adapt, utilise, and change them for the better. So we did something 2.5 years ago called the Amazon Echo. And the other night we launched about 300 new ones, which you might have seen. But this was our first way to try and build people's trust in devices and build the knowledge that they could use it very quickly in a room to do something from any angle. The reason I say this is if you look at the top of the device, there are 5 little gold beads, 6 little gold beads in fact, and a 7th in the middle. The reason they're there is they create what's called a far field array, which can listen from any direction. The theory being that when you speak to one of these microphones, it connects to you, calls what we form a beam, so you're speaking directly to that one. The other microphones remain switched on, but they're throwing away the other noise in the environment that they pick up, so it hears you more clearly through the beam. And that's the way we start to build the trust that what you're being said is being heard clearly and correctly. And that's exactly what the Echo was designed to do. So it's no fluke, it's a nice looking device and it sells very well, but there's some technology in there that was meant to start building people's expectations that bit more. So this is how we got into it. It's done very well. We've opened up more use cases through different areas of the house. You can not just speak to an Echo. Pretty much every Amazon device now carries Alexa in some form. We just announced our music app the other day now has Alexa to drive itself. But it's all the same service underneath, which I'll come to. So all these use cases, we're starting to build different places and different ways you interact with Alexa and build that level of trust and expectation that you will get what you want. When customers love Alexa, and this is where I give away a prize, if anyone can tell me what that number might represent, I'll give away an Echo if anybody gets it, and within 5 guesses or so. Sir? Oh.
Wow.
Have you seen this before?
No, but I've asked Alexa.
Okay.
She's already got
What did she say?
She said, I'm not that kind of girl.
Not that kind of girl, okay.
Very kind.
No, we changed the response. Just keep asking. She'll hear some good things over there. Spoiled my slide, but I'll give you something instead of an Echo if you want something. That many people have asked Alexa to marry them, but it's proved the point. People have got over this hurdle to that sort of number in the world so far, and we're only available in 3 countries, remember. So 250,000 people have asked Alexa to marry them. We know this, just to give you a buy-off about privacy and all that, because we provide an answer to that question, because we thought people would ask it. So we know it's been answered that many times. Then you've got people like my friend here, and I'm not going to tell you what he's doing, you can see for yourself. And he said, and I quote, and we didn't make this up, if I knew relationships were this easy, I would have married 30 years ago, but now, Alexa, there's no need. He feels that way about it because it's doing what he wants. I don't know what he wanted from it, to be honest, but it's doing what he wants to the extent he's taking it to bed. So people have got over this hurdle of trust, the human behaviour part. They're starting to use Alexa for themselves the way they want to. So that's the backstory and some fun. Why voice? And why has Amazon got into this in particular? So why are we doing it? Many people will hopefully recognise that. See a few people did. That's the bridge of the enterprise in one of its forms. It may not surprise you to learn that in a tech company there are many Star Trek fans. So some some years ago, some of those Star Trek fans, including the boss, decided that because of all the things we've been doing in cloud technology, machine learning and so on, this must be possible all of a sudden. And it's not the most difficult thing to do, because the bridge of the Enterprise didn't really answer back. It took an instruction and delivered it. But that's all they wanted as a basic thing. And then you must be able to extend it to something a little bit more like HAL from 2001 Space Odyssey and that sort of thing. But the basic instruction level was what they wanted to do. But because we did that, we believe voice can and will be everywhere as a result. And we've started to prove that. And just the other day, to build on my example, BMW announced on stage on Wednesday night that they will be selling Minis next year with Alexa in the dashboard off the shelf. And that'll be part of the sales that they make. Other models too. Ford already committed, Volkswagen already committed, but I think BMW will be first in the forecourt and announced it yesterday. Think about hands-free as a use case for voice. It's a natural thing. Some cars already do it. You can dial your phone by voice through the dashboard. It's connected to a phone. This is a complete standalone thing, but it does anything you could ask Alexa to marry from the car if that's what you wanted to do. So that sort of thing becomes available everywhere without any friction. Then think about kitchens. It's not one we expected overnight, but very quickly people started to use Echoes as the world's most expensive egg timer. But because they started to do that, they build repeat behaviour. They do the same thing every day, so they think, I'm going to try something else. My mum at 77 is living proof of this, that she's asked for something, the time even, and she's done something else the next day. So people started to ask for recipes. And thankfully, one of our partners, Campbell's Soup, offered recipes, which were their first to market with it. Then you ask something else. And kitchens are now a massive use case for Alexa. But it's led to more things. Smart home is also a massive use case. But it leads directly from the behaviour in the kitchen. There is now an oven that can be controlled by Alexa having recipe instructions. So as you get through the instructions step by step, the oven is being timed and controlled because it knows what step you're at. So you don't have to touch the oven. It's less of a distraction. It's also complete laziness, but it means you're not burning energy to get to environmental concerns that you haven't needed because your head's in a book. So that's the sort of thing that starts to happen. And once you get into smart home, turning on your bulbs, turning off your bulbs, things like that, my heating's controlled by Alexa, the TV channels, all that stuff, you do get to the level, like my son, where he shouts at everything, age 9, where he used to touch TV screens expecting them to be big tablets. Now he shouts at the fridge and things like that, because he expects it to work. But in 10 years, it'll answer him back. We have a fridge in the market that you can ask questions of. And it sounds ridiculous. That fridge might be Alexa connected, but I've told you, kitchens are one of the biggest use cases we have, so why wouldn't you have one of the main things in your kitchen permanently installed, have Alexa in it, rather than having a separate device? Why not just have a kitchen gadget that answers back? And that's the sort of thing we're starting to enable. But again, don't take my word for it necessarily. Walt Mossberg, who was the sage of The Verge, The Wall Street Journal, things like that, retired in the summer. He was the guy Steve Jobs used to give his phones to before they launched to make sure they weren't nuts. He said this in his very final column for The Verge, that ambient technology will be the next thing. Not just voice necessarily, but the technology of sensors that know something's been triggered and something needs to happen. We believe voice is the interface to retrieve and instruct, but there may be other environmental things that inform the instruction, such as, he says, a change in your blood chemistry. So Apple had phones last week that monitor your heart rate almost constantly, which is a good thing. You may ask questions of that and what to do with it. So voice is an augmentation of this sensory intelligence that's in the environment, and as he says, capabilities that don't seem to be there, but you know they are because you trust and expect them to work. So why Alexa? This is where we come in. So Amazon's got this theory that's doable. We've got the background that it's been coming. So why Alexa and why now? I'll not do a sales pitch because it's a short one, but we offer something called the Alexa Skills Kit, which is what I go out and promote and help people to build with, where you as content owners can build a language model where you probably think you couldn't have done before you started it, and build your own conversation that exposes your information and your conversation to Alexa users. And this is how many people have got into Alexa. They've built something that they've got answers for, so we help them define and listen for the right questions to give the answer back. On the other side, on the right, we have the Alexa voice service, which is how people enable fridges to have Alexa in them. We give away all the software that connects Alexa's voice to deliver the answers from the skills kit, ultimately. But anyone who has a device with a speaker and a microphone can make an echo, a fake one, but they can make a working echo. You can make it for about $4 with a Raspberry Pi if you fancy doing something for the weekend. It's really easy. The voice service is what everybody uses to do that, including BMW, for example, who just launched their car. So far we've got about 20,000 skills, slightly higher than that. So that's the number of things, brands that you can engage with on Alexa that will deliver an answer through a conversation. When I started to do these talks about 6 months ago, that number was 3,000. So in the space of a year, we've got a lot of traction on that. And you can see the sort of path it's starting to go, and that's carrying on. You'll see the number change over the next few months. And you get to know some brands that we recognise. So again, to show that we're fairly neutral on what Alexa is allowed to do, Ocado have built a skill based around their online shop, which is what we are at the end of the day. But they've done this and they're very happy to be part of it because they believe in the repeat behaviour, especially with devices in kitchens. You will fill your shopping basket choosing Ocado as the fulfilment, and they're very happy to be part of it. Others, DVLA just went live a month or two ago. You can now ask Alexa if your car is taxed, because many people, as of 2 years ago I think it was, you don't get tax discs. Many people don't know their cars are not taxed. You should know it's taxed and it's MOT, but you can find out. In truth, many people will use that to find out if their neighbour's car is taxed, but that's okay. That's okay. I used to run a site called myhouseprice.com many years ago, and everybody looked at the neighbours. That's what it was. EasyJet spotted this. They don't want to sell flights on it just yet because they think that's cumbersome, but they've done, is my flight on time? Nice and easy use case. Before you leave the house, am I going to be late, early? So it's an easy one to get through. Domino's, which my son used far too much, so I turned it off. Ask Domino's to feed me. It delivers your last order again. Just a repeat thing. And the one that I like that validates this whole thing, based on the mobile moment that I talked about, O2 are in this telling you your balance, top up, minutes you've got left, things, your allowances, things like that. This is something they do in their platform. They sell phones, but they still think Alexa is an easier way to get to the information. So they offer it as a voice service. So that's validation that we do prove it's useful enough that people who run their own service will do it through ours. And that's a good validation that we've gone the right way. Quickly, there's some other examples of the voice service. Won't dwell on these too much, but many brands have decided to bake Alexa into things they make, manufacturers mostly of technology, such as these, where you've got thermostats you can speak directly to rather than having an Echo send the instruction to them, through to other speakers that may look like an Echo but aren't, and we couldn't care less. If somebody wants to sell something like an Echo that delivers Alexa, then that's great because it gets it into the market. Headphones, phones, robots, cars, all sorts of things. I love the fridge. I recommend everybody to get one. It's got a door that you knock on, it becomes transparent. So really, really nice. So why now? I'll try and wrap this up as quickly as I can, so I'm going over a little bit. Speech recognition has improved so much in the last 3 or 4 years. About 50 years ago, you could only recognise 0 to 9 in digits reliably, and that was it. And it took 10 more years to add 4 more words to make a calculator out of that. So from a phone dialer to a calculator, 10 years of technical work, mainframes and things like that. Since the 70s, that's got easier. And you can see on the graph toward the right-hand side, as an industry, we now believe we can understand the words within 95% of any spoken phrase. Think about that for a second, in any language. But that level of accuracy is now achieved. It's not achievable, it's been done. But we're on the path to get to 99% because we believe that's when the mass adoption happens, that everybody will trust what they say, will be picked up, understood and responded to. So we believe for developers, which is why I do this, need to get involved in the next 3-4 years as that curve starts to really fire up. It might be quicker the way technology goes. But we think when we do that, we need to teach people not to do it too quickly. So we don't think voice, you dive in and do the really hard thing first. Start with something fairly simple. So we talk about the principle of crawling, walking and running, which is what you've seen with people like EasyJet who do the simple thing first, prove it works, and then open a slightly harder one. So crawl, core functionality that works. What will people use? Listen to what people do, optimize it, do something else, expand it, then run and evolve it to something much more complicated. Mobile app developers tend to go the other way. They tend to do too much and refine it back again. So we're trying to enforce at the start, because voice is still something nascent to all of us, to make sure we don't abuse it. So think about a traffic skill. Every day, National Rail does this with their Alexa skill. You can ask if your train's on time, which it probably isn't. So you know if you've got an extra 5 minutes in the house. But all you do is set it up once and ask, is my train on time? Every day. Nice repeat behaviour. Over time, you will trust that can answer something you didn't ask. So you say, is my train on time? Yes, but your walk at the other end might be delayed because of something. So add a little bit of value to the answer, which gives people trust. They might ask something else. And then over time, once we enable it, you might notify somebody of things they haven't asked. So if you know the train's late, or you know there's been an accident on the road, tell them at the given time of day it's going to be relevant. And that's something we will get to, undoubtedly, but we want to be careful that people won't abuse that, so we're being careful to rule it out. But that shows how a skill might evolve over time. But there's also touch points you might think about that aren't necessarily high or low value, but we think there's different entry points you might make that are worthwhile. So at the most basic level, and we use this for Prime Now and Black Friday and Prime Day and things like that, tell me what's on sale. Simple question, fairly complicated answer. You might get what you want, you might not. It's what we call a browse. Similar to pressing the lucky button on Google almost. Telling, a quick reference point, tell me about something. There are many skills in Alexa that will tell you about something that people have built that they've got specialist knowledge of. Something higher than that. You ask Ticketmaster, say, is there a gig for a band on a date? The answer should be complicated because you want to know if there's tickets left. What tiers are they in? What value are they? Can you go at all? Things like that. To the very highest value to me, which is the simplest skill, turn the light on, turn the heating on. Because really, if you think about it, there doesn't need to be a voice answer to that. If you ask for the light to come on and it came on, you've got what you wanted. So the highest value is almost the simplest one to make. So think about that, where you get into voice, if you choose to get into it. There are so many ways you might enter, some difficult, some not, but very high value to somebody, depending on what they ask. Just to close off, I'll give you a couple of things to think about. I can't play the video because it's a bit too long, but if you Google for Echo Silver, Saturday Night Live in the US did a bit of comedy about Echo to try and make out that old people can't use technology. It was made of wood, for example, and things like that. It would answer to any name because they couldn't remember the word Alexa. It gave an answer to everything they said to make it out they were interested in what the old person was saying, and things like that. But it's not true. If you look at one of the studies we've seen from MIT in Boston, they planted Echo Dots in the rooms of old people's homes on the East Coast without any instruction and just told them, when you have a minute, if you want to, ask it something. And our friend Lois, who was part of this study, used to look out her curtain every morning to see if it was raining. And her day was ruined if it was looking like it was going to rain, so she went back to bed. Aged 89, that's a little bit harder than it used to be. So she just thought one day, when she woke up, Alexa, will it rain today? From the bed, and it gave her the answer, yes, 100%. So she pulled up the sheets and went back to sleep. And that's just how she lived. She did it a different way. All we've done is make it easier, but according to Lois, and as you see in the quote, she finds it more pleasant, more enjoyable. It's a better life just by doing something she did before a little bit more easily. Having a friend in the room almost was something she hadn't thought about either. So somebody at 89 was able to pick this up, having never touched a computer in her life. My mum's living proof of this at 77, never ever touched a phone, computer, but uses Alexa about 50 times a day, probably. Prove the point. And these are friends I used to work with at Skyscanner who were my first subjects when I built an Alexa flight search about 2.5 years ago. On the left, they are slightly bemused, never having seen any of this before, didn't really know what to do. 10 minutes later on the right, I promise you it was 10 minutes later, and they didn't know they were being photographed, so I've had to get permission to use these. That's their natural reaction, including young Michael in the middle, when it worked. They genuinely get it and like it, and everybody in Skyscanner owns an Echo now, because they went through this testing phase and they all believe it. Genuinely, that's what people feel like when it works. And it's not hard to get to that if you think about the use cases and entry points I talked about before. So hopefully something to think about that maybe you hadn't before you came here today. I would very happily take questions outside, but please do email me if you have any more. I'm available all the time to answer online. Twitter or email, please do get in touch. Otherwise, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, David. Thank you so much. There's a bit of, don't go away.